I never imagined that my own family would become my worst nightmare. For years, my aunt has harbored a deep-seated hatred for me, all because she believes I'm faking my genetic disorder for attention. I was born with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, EDS, specifically the hypermobility type. This disorder affects the collagen in my body, leading to a host of issues including joint hypermobility, severe chronic pain, and extreme fatigue. Despite the challenges, I tried to live as normal a life as possible. But my aunt refused to believe I was truly suffering. About 11 years ago, my condition worsened to the point where I had to start using a wheelchair. Walking became too dangerous due to the risk of my hips dislocating. Even though I could still move my legs, my aunt became increasingly cruel, especially when we were alone. She accused me of lying about my illness just to steal attention away from others, particularly her. I chose to ignore her hateful comments, thinking it was better than causing a family rift. But everything changed during our yearly family dinner last week. My aunt, who had organized the dinner, drank more than usual and started making snarky comments about me in front of everyone. Some family members called her out, telling her to stop. That only made her angrier. As the evening progressed, I decided to take a break and went to the kitchen to take my medication. My aunt followed me, and that's when things took a dark turn. She cornered me, closing the door behind her, and started berating me, accusing me of ruining her dinner. Sensing danger, I discreetly started recording the incident on my phone. My aunt's tirade escalated quickly. She accused me of being jealous of her success and called me every name in the book. Her words turned into violence. She pushed me back into my wheelchair and started hitting me, dislocating my jaw and an arm. I tried to escape, but she managed to tip my wheelchair over, trapping my foot behind the footrest. Just when I thought I might lose consciousness from the pain, my dad burst through the door, having realized something was wrong when both my aunt and I had gone missing. He body slammed my aunt to the ground, keeping her pinned while my mom freed me from the wheelchair. The police and an ambulance arrived soon after. My aunt was arrested, screaming at my dad for laying hands on her, while my uncle tried to defend her, insisting she would never do something like this. I was taken to the hospital where doctors found I had fractured ribs, a dislocated arm, a dislocated jaw, and a broken foot, along with various cuts and scrapes. My recovery will take weeks, and my ankle may be permanently damaged. Despite everything, I felt guilty, knowing that my aunt's life was now in ruins. I started receiving voicemails from her, blaming me for destroying her life and finances. But the worst was yet to come. I decided to share the footage of the attack on a private family group page. The reactions were immediate and explosive. My aunt's reputation was shattered, and her husband quickly filed for divorce. Now she's more furious than ever, and I'm in the process of getting a restraining order against her. The footage has been handed over to the police and backed up on multiple platforms, and I'm considering suing her, with my insurance covering the legal costs. My parents refused to talk about that night, preferring to bury the memories rather than let them haunt me. But as much as I try to move on, the thought of my aunt coming after me is terrifying. For now, I'm focusing on my recovery and the legal battle ahead. The weeks following the incident felt surreal. My once peaceful life was now filled with lawyer meetings, doctor appointments, and sleepless nights. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still hear my aunt's enraged screams, and the searing pain of that night would rush back, vivid as ever. My parents tried their best to support me, but I could see the toll it was taking on them too. My mom, usually a pillar of strength, seemed more fragile, her eyes often red from crying. My dad, who had always been a calm and collected man, was now more distant, his voice strained every time my aunt's name was mentioned. It was as though our entire family was caught in a storm that just wouldn't pass. I received a call from the district attorney's office, informing me that my aunt was pleading not guilty. She claimed that I had provoked her, that I had attacked her first, and that everything I was saying was a lie. My uncle, who had initially been in shock, was now fully backing her story, trying to paint me as the villain. They were grasping at straws, but the thought of having to face them in court made my stomach churn. My lawyer, a kind but fierce woman named Karen, reassured me that the evidence was overwhelmingly in my favor. The video I had recorded was clear as day, capturing every word, every action. But Karen also warned me that the defense might try to discredit me, questioning my mental state, or even trying to argue that my condition made me an unreliable witness. The trial date was set, and as it approached, the anxiety gnawed at me. My aunt had been released on bail, and although the restraining order was in place, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time the phone rang, I jumped, expecting to hear her voice, filled with venom and rage. The voicemails had stopped, but the silence was almost worse. Meanwhile, my physical recovery was slow and painful. The doctors had been right about my ankle. It would never be the same again. Physical therapy was grueling, and there were days when I wanted to give up, when the pain seemed too much to bear. But I pushed through, fueled by the anger and hurt that simmered just beneath the surface. I also began seeing a therapist, a soft-spoken man named Dr. Patel, who helped me work through the trauma. We talked about the incident, but we also talked about the years leading up to it, the years of silent suffering, of biting my tongue and letting my aunt's cruelty go unchecked. Dr. Patel helped me see that I wasn't to blame, that the guilt I felt wasn't mine to carry. Despite all the support, there were still moments of darkness, when the weight of everything threatened to crush me. But in those moments, I found strength in the small things: my mom's gentle hugs, my dad's quiet presence, the way the sun streamed through my bedroom window in the mornings. I clung to those moments, reminding myself that there was still good in the world, still light even in the darkest of times. The day of the trial arrived faster than I had expected. I dressed carefully, my hands trembling as I buttoned my blouse. My parents were with me, their faces set in determined lines. As we entered the courtroom, I saw my aunt sitting at the defense table, her face pale but defiant. My uncle was beside her, his expression unreadable. The trial was a whirlwind of emotions. I had to relive every painful detail, recounting the events of that night while my aunt's lawyer tried to pick apart my story. But the video spoke for itself, and as it played in the courtroom, the room fell silent. My aunt's voice, filled with malice, echoed through the room, and I saw the jury's faces harden. When it was my aunt's turn to testify, she broke down in tears, claiming that she had been pushed to her breaking point, that I had always been a difficult child, and that she had simply lost control. But her performance was unconvincing, and the cross-examination quickly exposed the lies in her story. The jury deliberated for only a few hours before returning with a guilty verdict. My aunt was sentenced to several years in prison for aggravated assault, and as the judge read the sentence, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was over. Or so I thought. In the weeks that followed, the media picked up on the story. Reporters hounded us, wanting to know more about the family feud that had ended in a courtroom drama. I was thrust into the spotlight, something I had never wanted. My parents and I tried to keep a low profile, but it was impossible to avoid the attention completely. Strangers began reaching out to me, some offering support, others questioning my motives. The internet, as always, was a mixed bag. While many people rallied behind me, there were also those who accused me of exaggerating, of trying to milk the situation for fame or sympathy. It was infuriating, but I tried to focus on the positive messages, on the people who had gone through similar experiences and found solace in my story. Then, one day, I received an unexpected letter. It was from my uncle. In it, he'd apologized for everything, for not believing me, for standing by my aunt despite knowing, deep down, that she was in the wrong. He explained that he had filed for divorce and was trying to make amends for the damage his silence had caused. He asked for forgiveness, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to give it. As the months passed, life slowly began to return to some semblance of normalcy. I continued with therapy, working through the lingering trauma. My physical therapy sessions became less frequent as my body healed, though the scars, both physical and emotional, would remain. One day, as I was sitting by the window, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I realized something important. I had survived. Despite everything, I had come out the other side, stronger and more resilient than before. My aunt had tried to break me, but she had failed. And in that moment, I knew that I would be okay. It wouldn't be easy, and the road ahead would still have its challenges, but I was ready to face them. Because now, I had something my aunt could never take away from me. My own strength, my own voice, and the knowledge that I had stood up for myself when it mattered most. As I looked out at the setting sun, A sense of peace washed over me. The darkness was still there, but it was fading. And in its place was a new beginning. A chance to rebuild, to move forward, and to live my life on my own terms. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all. Life continued to evolve in ways I hadn't anticipated. With the trial behind me, I was eager to reclaim some sense of normalcy, but the echoes of that traumatic night lingered. The media frenzy gradually died down, but the impact of the events remained a heavy presence in my life. My parents and I began to rebuild our routine, but the process was anything but smooth. My father, who had been my rock during the entire ordeal, seemed to retreat into his work, using it as an escape from the emotional weight of what had happened. My mother, on the other hand, threw herself into organizing support groups for families affected by violence. It was her way of finding purpose amid the chaos, but it sometimes left me feeling like a bystander in my own recovery. During this time, my relationship with my uncle remained strained. Though he had apologized, I struggled to reconcile his past actions with his newfound remorse. His divorce from my aunt was finalized and he moved away, trying to start over. He sent occasional messages, asking for updates on my well-being, but I found it hard to engage with him. The trust had been shattered, and healing those wounds felt like an insurmountable task. I threw myself into advocating for those with similar disorders. Sharing my story publicly had been cathartic, and it was clear that my experience resonated with others. I began speaking at events and participating in panels focused on disability rights and abuse awareness. Each time I shared my story, it felt like a small step toward reclaiming my life and helping others who might be in similar situations. The emotional scars took longer to heal. Dr. Patel, my therapist, guided me through a new phase of recovery. We focused on rebuilding my sense of self-worth and addressing the complex feelings I had toward my aunt and uncle. It was a difficult process, but with each session, I learned to let go of the anger and resentment that had been consuming me. Gradually, I found solace in creative outlets. I started painting and writing, using these mediums to express the emotions that words alone couldn't capture. My art became a reflection of my journey, a testament to the pain I had endured and the strength I had found. It was both therapeutic and empowering, allowing me to process my feelings in a healthy way. I also began volunteering with organizations that support individuals with genetic disorders, using my own experiences to advocate for better healthcare and support systems. It was a way to turn my pain into something positive, to contribute to a cause greater than myself. The connections I made with others who understood my struggles were invaluable, and it helped me feel less isolated. As time went on, I started to rebuild relationships with extended family members who had distanced themselves during the ordeal. Some were hesitant at first, but many offered heartfelt apologies and support. It was a long road, but gradually, the wounds began to heal, and I found a new sense of balance and acceptance within my family. My physical recovery continued, and while my ankle remained a challenge, I adapted to my new reality. The cast came off, and I embarked on a journey of physical therapy and adaptation, learning to live with the long-term effects of my injuries. Each small victory, from regaining mobility to managing pain, was a testament to my resilience. One day, I received a letter from a young woman who had heard my story through one of the advocacy groups I worked with. She shared that my experience had inspired her to seek help and stand up against the abuse she had endured. Her words were a powerful reminder of why I had chosen to share my story in the first place. It was moments like these that made the entire journey worthwhile. I also began to explore new hobbies and interests that brought joy into my life. I took up gardening, which provided a sense of peace and accomplishment as I nurtured plants and watched them flourish. The simple act of caring for something and watching it grow was incredibly fulfilling. As I looked back on the events of the past year, I saw them as a turning point, a painful chapter that had ultimately led me to a place of growth and self-discovery. I had faced unimaginable challenges and emerged stronger, with a renewed sense of purpose and a deeper understanding of myself. Though the scars remained, both visible and invisible, I learned to embrace them as part of my story. They were reminders of my strength and resilience, symbols of the battles I had fought and the victories I had achieved. And as I continued to navigate life, I carried with me the knowledge that no matter how dark the journey, there is always a path forward, and there is always hope for a brighter future. With each passing month, the turbulence of the past slowly began to settle, though the ripples of that chaotic period continued to influence my life in unexpected ways. The journey towards full recovery, both physically and emotionally, was ongoing, but the resilience I'd cultivated started to yield meaningful changes. I became more involved in the disability community, using my platform to advocate for better access and support. My experiences led me to work closely with legislative bodies to push for policy changes that would benefit individuals with similar disorders. It was a slow and arduous process, but seeing tangible progress made me feel like my efforts were making a difference. The advocacy work became a source of pride and purpose, and it was a powerful way to channel my energy into something positive. I also started a blog where I shared my journey and offered advice to others dealing with similar issues. The response was overwhelming. People from all over reached out to share their stories and seek advice. The blog became a hub for support and information, and it fostered a sense of community among readers. I found solace in connecting with others who understood my struggles, and it was gratifying to know that my story was helping others find their own path to healing. One day, I was contacted by a documentary filmmaker who wanted to tell my story. At first, I was hesitant, concerned about revisiting such a painful chapter. However, after several discussions with the filmmaker and my therapist, I realized that sharing my story on a broader scale could have a profound impact. The documentary aimed to raise awareness about abuse and disability, and I agreed to participate, knowing that it could help shine a light on issues that were often overlooked. Filming the documentary was both cathartic and challenging. It required me to confront many aspects of my past that I had tried to put behind me. However, it also provided a sense of closure and an opportunity to advocate for change on a larger platform. The final product was a moving portrayal of my journey and the broader issues faced by individuals with disabilities. As the documentary gained attention, I was invited to speak at conferences and participate in panel discussions. These opportunities allowed me to share my experiences with a wider audience and contribute to important conversations about disability rights and abuse prevention. The recognition was both humbling and empowering, and it affirmed that my voice was making a difference. Amidst this newfound visibility, I also focused on nurturing my personal relationships. Reconnecting with friends and family members who had been distant was an essential part of my healing process. I made an effort to rebuild trust and strengthen bonds that had been strained during the tumultuous period. It was a gradual process, but the support of those closest to me was invaluable. One of the most unexpected joys was the renewed relationship with my daughter. As she matured, she began to understand the complexity of family dynamics and the challenges I faced. Our interactions grew more meaningful, and she expressed a genuine desire to be part of my life in a more authentic way. We started spending quality time together, engaging in activities that we both enjoyed, and gradually rebuilt our connection. My relationship with my aunt's ex-husband also evolved. After the divorce, he reached out to apologize for his earlier stance and for the way he had defended his ex-wife. He admitted that he had been wrong and expressed a sincere desire to make amends. While I was still processing my feelings, his apology was a step toward healing old wounds. We worked on establishing a civil relationship, focusing on the shared goal of supporting the family. As I continued to rebuild my life, I also explored new hobbies and interests. I took up writing fiction, which provided a creative outlet for my emotions and allowed me to explore different narratives. The process of crafting stories became both therapeutic and fulfilling, and it helped me find joy in the act of creation. Looking back on the journey, I saw it as a testament to resilience and the capacity to transform adversity into strength. The scars from the past remained, but they no longer defined me. Instead, they were part of a larger story of recovery, advocacy, and personal growth. I had faced the darkness and emerged into a new chapter, equipped with the tools to navigate the complexities of life and make a positive impact on the world around me. The future remained uncertain, but I approached it with a sense of hope and determination. I knew that the road ahead would have its challenges, but I was ready to face them with the strength and resilience I had developed along the way. My journey was far from over, but I was confident that, with each step forward,